It is said that horror thrives in the unknown. But what if the unknown wasn't lurking in the dark behind a veil of shadow or static, or in the stars above? What if the unknown already existed here on Earth, growing and spreading like a plague? A world where flesh isn't just bound to animals, but has evolved into something completely independent. Let me introduce you to the world of Vita Carnis, an exceptionally disturbing analog horror series that, unlike its predecessors, doesn't rely on ghosts, demons, or technological hauntings. What makes it unique is that it preys on something far more visceral: our fear of biology gone wrong. Evolution guided by a hand much different than the one guiding us. A world in which meat has become its own life form and threatens to usurp mankind. Tonight, we're going deep into the terror of Vita Carnis, its creatures, the implications, humankind's coexistence, and what it might say about the future of life itself.
On planet Earth, life has thrived for millions of years. Creatures big and small have found ways to adapt and evolve to flourish in all types of environments. From barren wastes to lush forests, life can be found. Earth has homed these creatures since the dawn of life itself.
This wonderfully grotesque and disturbing series takes place in an alternate reality where our world is introduced to a new species, dubbed Vita Carnis, or translated from Latin, living flesh. Unlike more traditional horror creatures, however, the Carnis organisms aren't supernatural per se, but what seems to be rather a very erratic and odd line of natural evolution. In the introduction episode to the series, we're given an insight to the Carnis species and its kin through the eyes of the National Living Meat Institute, who, just like every series I've seen, will be scrutinized immediately by myself for whether their intentions are benign or not. Each subspecies shares one common starting point: an organism called the crawl. It is an overabundant plant-like organism that acts similar to vines or fungus, except it resembles more of an intestinal tract. It is shown to be more robust and efficient than most plants we know of, combining both nutrient absorption through its vein-like organs as well as beyond efficient photosynthesis. Now, in theory, it should actually outcompete every plant-based organism in this series, yet we find this is not the case. Quite the opposite, actually. This is very interesting that while we're shown that it may be an invasive species, it is, however, in fact coexisting and even beneficial to the ecosystem. We find this is also true in our next two species, trimmings and meat snakes. Trimmings are the first somewhat advanced species to come from the crawl, resembling skinned raccoons or small-skinned mammals. While not exceptionally large, they are just as vast in number as its parent species, and even show traits of evolutionary difference amongst themselves. While it's noted that they are rather docile omnivores and somewhat cowardly, their diet makes them mostly scavengers, subsisting off things like decaying plant matter and rotting meat. Even stranger, they are sometimes kept as pets by humans due to their docile nature. Meat snakes, our next creature, although the name implies that they do look like snakes, they more like resemble large slugs with a thin membrane covering their body. These creatures can reach maximum lengths of 16 feet, although, depending on the abundance of their sustenance, they can grow much larger than that. This creature, similar to trimmings, are scavengers due to their chemical composition of the digestive system. A meat snake will only feed on dead organisms, and in another unique evolutionary twist, will adapt food to the size of its body, even using the skulls of whatever corpse it has recently consumed as its own. Immune to disease and pestilence, it is the only known carni species that reproduces via asexual mitosis. Meat snakes can be found in rather moderate temperatures, and their population really depends on how many corpses are in the immediate area. Humanity is also able to use this species to their advantage, using them for such things as roadkill disposal, living compost bins, and even battlefield disposal, marking the first known codependence between species. This is exactly where humanity plummets off from the top of the food chain.
The mimic.
Enter Trudactium carnis. The mimic. At this point, it's becoming pretty clear that the carni species is showing more signs of dangerous predatory evolution as we're introduced to the mimic, a bipedal creature resembling humans with exaggerated features. The mimic is a strict carnivore with one single type of prey.
A mature mimic's diet is comprised entirely of human flesh.
Now, there are 3 cycles that a mimic will go through in its lifetime, from something resembling a sleek and emaciated trimming to its second stage, a mature mimic, an ambush predator, cold and calculating. It will stalk prey for endless periods of time, wait until they are either asleep or cornered, and overpower and consume its victim. The scariest part about this is that as it reaches its final stages of its life cycle, it will actually go one of 2 ways. If it has a consistent supply of food, it will begin to adapt to look as close to humans as possible, meaning it can grow skin, fingernails, hair, and even begin to wear clothing. This increases its prowess as a hunter, now being able to hide in crowds and blend in. If there is an overabundance of food, an elder mimic is born. It loses all of its already rudimentary human features, grows drastically, its flesh now covered by a dark, robust coating, which becomes even more durable the more it eats. Its teeth have now moved further down its throat, and I can only assume that this is due to its size in relation to its prey. There are real-life examples of species of animals that have teeth or other similar body parts located in their throat, and that is only to help aid in holding prey while they are swallowed whole, to avoid thrashing or drastic movements. In other words, the elder mimic is the last thing that you want to run into in this universe. Nations around the world have released several PSAs and warnings about how to deal with mimics due to their environment. But if I can be completely honest with you, I doubt any of this advice works. The mimic, as I said earlier, is described as a perfect predator. Moving on through our list of dangerous creatures, we have harvesters, the Venus flytrap of the series. Harvesters provide a different threat altogether to humans, while still being efficient predators, but not in the same sense as mimics. Harvesters evolve from crawl just like every other species. However, instead of the node falling off, the node begins to grow drastically, and the mother branch turns into a 9-foot-tall fleshy bulb, with tendrils reaching almost 500 feet out of diameter around it. It possesses 2 types of tendrils which work to catch prey, with one being used as both an administrator of neurotoxin and anticoagulant agents, while others act similar to crawl vines, absorbing the nutrients of their prey. These spines resembling bear traps will only activate with something heavier, like a large mammal or human, and the only way out of an area where a harvester exists is to hope to God you have something heavy to throw to activate the tendrils, lest you become their next meal.
If you find yourself in the middle of a harvester ground, do not panic. Sudden movements may activate the tendrils and will inject you. Although a harvester is rather forgiving, do not risk any skittish movements. Remain calm. If you have any objects with considerable heft, like coats, backpacks, or full water bottles, gently take that object and lightly toss it towards the bulb. and away from your escape route. This will activate the spines on where the object lands, distracting the bulb for a moment. You will then slowly begin to do wide shuffles away from the bulb. If possible, throw another object when you are certain you are a fair enough distance away, just to be safe. Continue until you are completely sure you are out of harm's way. You may come out unscathed, but don't be too obnoxious, or you will be a harvester's next meal.
If there was something that could give a mimic a run for being the scariest creature in the series, to me it would be the host of influence. A host is, from what I can tell, a chimera both comprised of plant and animal characteristics, being both an ingenious and patient predator. Outside of its semi-humanoid upper half, the lower half is more reminiscent of a tree or plant, with root-like tendrils underneath it. Located only in North America, these beings possess a horrifying means in which to hunt with. What are originally thought to be hairs along its back and top of its head are in fact barrels for spores, and once inhaled, these spores will float on the wind and infect the first human victim that inhales them, showing signs of neurological distress originally, until they begin to wander straight to the host. Once the host is reached, it will feast on the victim and discard the remains. If they cannot find prey, the host can simply unroot itself and move to another location, which to me shows that this creature has some semblance of intelligence. What would a good horror series be without a good mystery, though? We see that the final two species, not much is known of, but as I get deeper into this, we may discover that these two go hand in hand with each other. The monoliths, or Vita Carnis, have only appeared once in one specific area. These cyclopean behemoths are hundreds of feet tall and stand silently in a circle, as if awaiting the call of an unseen master. The only known event regarding a monolith was truly disturbing, and while most of the information was redacted, we know that these beings are completely unfazed by human intervention, as even small missiles did absolutely nothing to damage them. In response, they are now blocked off by an exclusion zone created by the government, leaving more questions than answers in this series.
List is.
The singularity is an orb comprised of a dark-colored mineral with hints of luminous colors within its core. The singularity is estimated to be 1 meter in diameter. The orb has several unique qualities that are not well understood. The singularity typically can be found suspended in air by an unseen force. There are also a variety of reading that have been documented coming from the orb itself. Various things like magnetic fields, energy signatures, and other pattern-like signals released by the singularity. The population of these creatures is unknown. Almost all info about the singularity is hidden or confiscated by officials. We were only able to receive one classified document about the singularity being held by
A mineral-like structure hovers as if held up by an unseen force, shows signs of magnetic fields, frequency emission, and a sentience not yet seen in any other species so far. Just like the monoliths, the singularity is as unknown as the origins of the Carnis species. The only information we are given is that of its strange capabilities and that they are incredibly rare to see, much less find. We don't know yet if they originate from Krull, but personally, I'm beginning to wonder if there's more to their existence, as no other creature, outside monoliths, possess any capabilities remotely close to the singularity. Now, it's no secret that all humans know is that of destruction and the consumption of the world that they live in. It should come as no surprise that this is no different in Vita Carnis. However, there are some, well, interesting details. It should also come as no surprise that there is an interesting relationship between humans and the Carnis, from domestication, utilization, and even possibly worship. The clues were apparent from the get-go, yet we are lured into a sense of consumerism and complacency while watching the entirety of the series, similar to how a host lures and controls its quarry. Now, there are two follow-up videos after the living meat research video, one involving a recipe using crawl, and another for how to take care of a domesticated trimming. There are things to note outside of the hidden and subliminal messages, yet there's one thing that bugs me. Product placement. In the crawl cooking video, we are bombarded with making sure that we use Nutri-Co seasoning, being told that the seasoning will enhance the flavor of the dish. I really found it odd that it was so specific and adamant about this, and we'll get to that in a second.
1 tablespoon of garlic, a pinch of pepper, and finally, the most crucial ingredient, Nutri-Co Company's newly released flavor enhancer, to bring out the richness of flavors within each and every meal.
The next thing I found off, and keep in mind I went blind into this series, was that in the video trimming care, we're told two specific things again. One, we can talk to them as if they are human, such as telling them about our day, which I found incredibly weird and ominous.
And lastly, as said before, trimmings are social creatures, so be sure to give them plenty of affection. They love receiving pats, scratches, and pets. They also love to sit with you and cuddle. Since they communicate with each other in the wild, it is best to replicate this behavior with them as well. Simply talking to them is plenty enough. You can talk about your day, if anything interesting happened at work, if you are working on any new recipes, or talk about the weather. Trimmings are very good listeners and love to be involved.
And that they enjoy listening to the radio. Not music, though, just empty static.
To all the funny things coming from the devices.
I'll break this out real quick and say that there's a similarity in trimmings and the singularity. Trimmings seem keen to listen to these empty frequencies, but they might not be empty at all. The singularity has been noted to have the ability to manipulate and generate frequencies, most likely to send a message. What the purpose of this message is still unknown. The intricacies of humankind's relationship is further looked into with the meat snake specimen report, documenting a behemoth snake located in a tunnel around the time World War II ended. While the details of this report are strange enough in itself, such as the snake's traits, how it got there, or much less how it disappeared at the end of the video, given the fact that it is completely immobile and has engorged itself into the tunnel, there's a very, very specific shot.
There for quite some time. So how did it get so large? The answer was discovered by a different cleaning crew, who found the other end of the tunnel. They followed it until it met with the other end of the meat snake. Alongside it was a huge pile of
While asking yourself who or what is responsible, you're given an answer that would be plain as day if you were paying attention. In one shot in the video, the redacted official, who seems to be some sort of government agent, has an eerily familiar pin on his uniform, implying that there's much more at play between the Carnis species and humans. We also find out that there's another faction involved, behaving similar to the National Living Meat Institute that is focused on both study of the Carnis species, as well as blowing open a conspiracy involving them. The organization, codenamed Carcass, is clandestine in nature and believes that there is more to the Carnis-human relationship than we know. And it becomes clear, with horrific circumstances, that they were in fact right. The discoveries that they unearth are immense. Harvesters navigating a strange migratory pattern, upticks in other strange activity in the Carnis species, and of course, Nutria Co. being something more than just a seasoning company. As we addressed earlier in the documentary segment, the 7 known monoliths are located in a redacted area standing in a circular Stonehenge-esque pattern. The location? It's exactly where the harvesters are amassing to, an unnamed island in the Hudson Bay. Carcass is poised to find out exactly why this is the case. Not just through observation, but aggressive infiltration. What they find is truly disturbing and world-shattering.
Mission brief. Three ground teams are tasked with infiltrating a previously abandoned mall titled Facility Zero, which is located in the restricted zone based on our info. The mission will take place in 3 stages: infiltration, encirclement, and ambush.
Alpha team, in position.
Beta team, in position.
Gamma team, in position.
Copy. Beginning phase 1.
Eyes on the point. Clearing pathway now. Pathway cleared. Give it the green light.
Copy. Green light is a go. Begin phase 2 in advance.
Alpha team, copy. Beginning advance. All right, we're heading out. Move, move, move! Lights off. Come on. Move. Keep your distance. Single file. Halt! In position, awaiting green light. Eyes are secure. Turning blind. Light's green.
Copy. Green light is a go. Begin phase 2 in advance.
position. We are experiencing mechanical interference. Should we resume? Copy. Phase 3 is still a go. Preparing for breach.
Breach in 3, 2, 1. Breach.
Get down! Put your hands up! Put your hands up! Get down! Get down! Put down your weapon! Get down! Put down your weapon! Put your hands up! Get down! I said get down!
Well, there's your government conspiracy. High-ranking officials and world leaders worshipping the living flesh, performing some strange ritual including singularities, which we now find that there are 7 of. 7 monoliths, 7 singularities. Now, I was excited to see some type of occult activity in this series, but what I wasn't expecting was what else Carcass agents found. Some of the security had rather odd features, their fingers specifically. If that stands true, then this isn't just human influence alone. Mimics, beings of the Carnis species, were working alongside the cult, and if not just that, they may have also been the cult itself. Carcass, after terminating the cult personnel and extracting the singularities, returned to their research facility to study the beings. Those still left alive during the raid, the same high-ranking officials, were put on trial for their heinous actions, and Neutrier had received tremendous backlash and even lawsuits and investigations due to their secret ingredient being implied to be none other than spores from hosts of influence, in turn making people violently ill. With these discoveries, it seems that the world has spiraled into a mass panic, leaving the Carnis to do as they please. There's so many questions that have yet to be answered so far. Why were there so many harvesters encroaching on the island? What is the relationship between the monoliths, the sentinels of the island, the singularities, and the cult? Was the cult comprised of both Carnis and humans? And the biggest question, what exactly does Carcass want to discover with the Carnis species? Through their research, we've discovered more and more about these creatures and how little we originally knew in the first place. Carcass seems to have discovered a means to reproduce Crawl artificially, and just like Jeff Goldblum said in Jurassic Park, your scientists were so preoccupied with whether they could, they didn't stop to think if they should. Naturally, the artificial Crawl births new life, from trimmings to meat snakes and even mimics, and Carcass begins their observations. We can see that even the Crawl, in one of their experiments, seems to gravitate towards radio frequencies similar to trimmings. On that note, in an experiment with the trimmings, they discover that their intelligence far surpasses what they initially had thought, and through behavioral tests, learn that not only can trimmings respond to their environment through memory, but can pass along this learned information via some unknown means.
Keep them together. A new batch of juveniles were added to the main colony at the beginning of the new progress report. They were accepted into the community immediately. No conflict or rejection observed. They did provide the circumstances to document more of their interactions. Trimmings communicate through a series of vocal cues. Colony members meeting the new batch with squeaks and squeals. They also are not afraid to show us when they are upset. Trimmings also use some physical displays as well. For example, Trimmings do a chewing or chatter motion with their mouths when they are happy or interested in something. The experiment that we performed was to explore the extent of their communication skills. The test went like this. We took one of the trimmings and had them in place in a modified enclosure. A speaker would play 2 separate audio cues. A positive cue would play, followed by a treat, and a negative cue, followed by a small spray of cold water. We did several rounds of both audio cues to condition the trimming's response. After the test, the trimming was released back to its colony. And after a few hours, we tested how much the trimmings communicated. Another speaker was placed near the colony's enclosure, where we played the same audio cues. It is incredible to see how layered their social interactions can be. Although, we tried something a bit bizarre. We found out that a wild colony had settled around the facility recently. It was strange, what we did. It was a long shot. We set up a radio device near the wild colony and near ours. We linked both devices up and played the cues.
It's clear they share a hive mind now, but what exactly is pulling the strings? The singularity. Not only does it communicate with other species groups, but we've now come to find the potential origins of the Vita Carnis. We can see that in this video, in the presence of dead tissue, the singularity deconstructs the corpse, reassembling it as crawl. This becomes a shocking discovery. While not giving us a definitive answer to the origins of these species, we now know that the singularity is fully capable of creating crawl from dead tissue, that in turn, that crawl will spawn more carnis. And the singularities? Yes, the singularity can speak. They're sentient.
Hello. Can you hear me? Can you understand what I am saying? Can you hear? Yes. Holy shit. What now? What should I say? What are you? What are you? Let's try something else. Can you still hear us? Okay. What are you? Can you explain? What are your connections to the Vita Carnis species? These are too vague. Try another question. Do you know why you are here? Did you hear us? We aren't getting anywhere. What?
These boxes, devices, they talk.
Are you talking about the radios? Radios transmit and receive waves and translate it into sound.
Brilliance. Much brilliance. I feel more noise. Can we see more?
Do you want more radios?
This series, while ongoing with the most recent episode being Terminal Rally, has quite a lot of questions left unanswered. But what we do know so far is this. In the 1930s, there was a discovery of a new species called the Vita Carnis, a group of beings comprised solely of meat, organs, and tissue. It's a possibility that they've been around for longer, but this remains to be seen. Although all forms originate from Crawl, it could be possible that singularities are in fact the origin source, even possibly creating monoliths individually alongside Crawl. I have an additional theory to the monoliths, but I'll address that in a second. Humans, in an attempt to coexist or exploit the species, begin to utilize several while learning how to live alongside other, more hostile variants. Now, there are 2, possibly 3 shady coalitions, which include the Cult and Nutrite Co., and I suspect the National Living Meat Institute has a hand in this as well. The Cult, an unnamed zealous faction, seems to be attempting to unite the singularities in some ritual, and I think has tried to do this before. The unnatural meat snake specimen was another attempt at this, and I believe that the mass grave it was being fed was created by the hands of the Cult. To what extent of this ritual was to be performed also remains to be seen. Speaking of that, we also know that these factions are comprised of both high-ranking government officials, politicians, and even possibly mature mimics, who share a mysterious goal of uniting the singularities and performing this eldritch ritual. The ritual, I believe, was almost completed, and I suspect that part of this ritual was creating the monoliths, large beings that stood as guardians over Facility Zero. It has an uncanny relation to Stonehenge, an old Celtic site of worship and rituals where gates were opened to other realms. Another important thing to note is that the name Singularity has relevance as well. The name, the Singularity, may be a reference to the singularity point of a black hole, the central point in which matter is compressed down to an infinitely tiny point, and all conceptions of time and space completely break down. The visual similarities between black holes and the singularity also backs this theory up. This also gives validity to the claim that singularities are in fact gateways or entry points for the Carnis species. With the arrival of Carcass, another organization that seeks to expose the cult and their affiliates, the singularities now reside at their research facility, leading to discoveries between the singularity and other Carnis. With all of that in mind, I have two theories. The first theory, the Vita Carnis are the new dominant species on Earth, created through evolution and external sources, which in this case are the singularities themselves. They don't immediately have a major impact on the flora and fauna outside of humans, and in fact benefit them. I think that the singularities are in fact the architects of the Vita Carnis, and the evolution of the Carnis is based off whatever life exists at their time of influence. It's very reminiscent of the game Dead Space, and think of it like this. The singularities are sentient beings, possibly extra-dimensional in nature, and go from plane to plane, planet to planet, reshaping life in their image, similar to the markers and the Brethren moons. I love this theory, but there are some inconsistencies that just don't sit right with me. I can't understand why or where the singularities came from, how they came to exist, and although that bothers me, that adds to the effectiveness of the series. The more likely theory, however, is this. The cult came before the Vita Carnis species, and through discovery of their existence, a ritual was performed to bring them into existence. And over time, their influence was able to create a massive spike in the Vita Carnis population. This correlates with the time period of the arrival, around the time that a major world war had just ended and another was beginning. This gave the singularities enough corpses to create crawl, and like a tinder for a flame, was enough to spark the coming of the Carnis. The cult has been monitoring this ever since, by appointing high-ranking officials in places that they may oversee and move pieces as they need. Whatever this end goal may be also remains unknown as well, but I am more than willing to bet that their end goal is to continue working with the singularities to bring forth the Carnis species as the dominant life form. One small problem though. The arrogance of mankind is thinking that nature is in their control, and not the other way around. The cult, while even comprised of mature mimics, believes itself to be disciples of flesh and meat, but who's to say they aren't only a means to an end, but also just another meal? All in all, this was my first time watching this series in its entirety about a week ago, and I have to say this is easily one of the best analog horror series created. It takes several types of horror tropes and fleshes, no pun intended, out a very unique and original story. Something that really pops out to me is that Vita Carnis isn't just a horror series. It's almost a thought experiment. We constantly pride ourselves in being the penultimate life form, and the idea of something challenging that is horrifying on a primal level. Evolution never stops, and biology always adapts, and there's always the encroaching threat of something usurping our spot in the food chain. If you haven't checked the series out, I strongly recommend it, and perhaps one day we may even use this series as an example of what will bring down the empire of man. For more deep dives and analysis into horror series such as Vita Carnis, just remember to like, subscribe, and don't forget, stay weird.
Sir, is it really in our best interest to give these things what they want? We don't even know what they're looking for.
I understand your concern, but this is the biggest breakthrough we have ever gotten. This may be the greatest breakthrough of all history. Representatives of the UN will be arriving in just a few days to see our progress. This is too important to stop now. We are on the verge of something massive. And if the representatives are impressed, we get the funding to see how far this can go. So, For now, you and the team go and give the orcs what they want. Keep making reports, but keep them quick. We need to learn as much as we can in this short time frame.
Yes, sir.